Turn off your music there, Lawrence. Lawrence, if it's trademark music in any way, they'll silence our video.
Okay. Well, that, I don't know if it's trademark, but anyhow, it's off.
Okay. Hey, we are live. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. They got to hear all that. Hey, everybody. It's Uncle Grumpy, and welcome to Grumpy Tonight. As you can see, I'm here tonight with Dr. Lawrence Pasternack. Please share the video if you don't mind. I see we've already got a few people jumping in. It's giving me a number, but not names. So say hi if you don't mind. We'll say hi back. Tonight, we are going to talk about the petitions put out by ORCA in general about both of them. But for the most part, we're going to get into some detail on the full access petition. So first, Lawrence, why don't you say hi to everybody and give me a minute to pass this around a little bit.
All right. Hello, everybody. I see Robin Selig has joined us, 5 or so other people. I'm in a 12 Monkeys kind of mood today, I suppose. That's the, you heard a little bit of the theme song for 12 Monkeys, and that's the logo in the background.
How was your birthday? This was your birthday weekend, right?
Yeah. Yesterday was my birthday. I turned 54. And it was just a pretty much relaxing day at home. My in-laws were supposed to come over, but they had some travel issues, so that got canceled. So pretty much I just spent the day sitting around talking and thinking and a little bit of reading, and didn't do too much at all.
Little research though, right? I heard you were doing a little research this weekend.
Yeah. Yep. I have a paper, in January. I'm up to date now with all my other deadlines, but I have another paper in January, so I'm kind of getting started with that one.
Well, let's throw a teaser out there. You were doing a little research on psychedelics this weekend, because we're talking about possibly putting together some language for psychedelics. So we'll throw that.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll throw that teaser out there. Not for psychedelics, for psilocybins. We'll throw that teaser out there for now.
There's been some talk about a bill for next year on psilocybin mushrooms, and so I was reading a little bit about the mushrooms, about how psilocybin works in the brain, and some of the research. Thank you for the birthday wishes, and so on. Just like when I got interested in 788, I spent many hours reading cannabis research. So I'm just starting to spool up on that with regards to mushrooms.
Well, that's great. I look forward to learning a lot this week as we go back and forth and take a look at some language. Okay, so as we said, tonight we're going to talk about in detail, we're going to get into detail on the full access petition put out by ORCA. Again, everybody, please share if you don't mind. Hit the like button. Hey, Robin, I see you're on there. I can finally see everybody now. I got the right screen open. All right, Lawrence, you've been working with Jed to put together the language for ORCA. Why don't you just give a little bit of history on that?
Sure. Well, I think it was in February, if I recall. Jed or Chip, I forget who first contacted me, asked me if I was interested in working with a group to put together the language. And so we began with a series of weekly meetings and kind of just brainstorming and conceptualizing. And then after maybe 6 weeks of that, I was asked to start getting the language together for full access. So the original idea basically was to make the full access just a plugin that pretty much just takes our existing program and says, no card needed, everyone 21 and older. And so that was sort of the original idea. But part of it also was, let's try to sort of fix some of the issues that people are facing with our current program with regards to barriers to employment, barriers to healthcare, and so on. So what the full access petition came to be basically was take our existing program, strengthen the personal rights and protection section, and basically put all that language in the medical petition for card holders, and then pretty much the identical language in the full access petition for for anyone 21 and older. And the full access petition would also have an expungement at the end. So people who are currently in jail, people who have criminal records and so forth related to cannabis, those would be addressed.
And these personal protections you're talking about, these are the things that you and I have been going back and forth over for the last 6 months and hammering all this out, right? I mean, this list has been pretty well beat to death as to trying to make sure we get everything covered correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. So, we have been trying to get as input, trying to brainstorm, and basically the question that has been asked, that's been guiding all of this is, tell me all the ways in which the legacy of cannabis prohibition has negatively affected people's lives. And let's address all of those.
Okay, but these petitions, while they do that, and you've done a great job making sure all those things we've been discussing for so long have gotten in there, they do other things as well. They also address a lot of business issues. Just give a quick comparison if you don't mind, and we'll get into the details in a minute. But for example, the full access versus the medical petition. The medical petition has considerably more industry stuff in it, does it not? Or is it all the same?
So one way to think about it is that, I don't remember the word count exactly, but 788, the word count for 788 was about 3,000 words. The word count for the full access petition is like 3,800 words, something like that. And the word count for the medical petition is something like 8,000 words. I could be off a little bit, but it's something in that ballpark. Similarly, in terms of constitutional provisions, the alcohol articles in the Oklahoma Constitution are about 6,800 words, something like that. So the full access petition is a little bit longer than all the alcohol rules in the Constitution.
Okay, but then the medical one is longer than that, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the medical one is longer
that's what I thought.
than yeah, the medical one is a little longer than the alcohol. The full access one is about half the size of the alcohol. It's only a little bit longer than 788.
Okay, so as to my question, the medical, then it does address a lot of business issues that are concerns the industry has as well, and not all of those are in the full access, right?
Yeah, like originally the idea was the full access would be nothing but a plugin, just like a page. That was kind of the original idea. And so overwhelmingly, the difference between the two is that the medical petition, maybe close to half of it involves basically restructuring the regulatory agency, setting up the regulatory agency, setting up the licensing language and all of that stuff. So it fixes a lot of the issues that people feel are present in OMA as it currently exists. And that's the bulk of the difference between the two.
Okay. All right. So let's take a hard look here at the full access petition. I know you've got some notes drawn up for us to look at that give a little bit of a comparison, but mostly, as I said in the setup here, we're mostly going to drill down on the full access. We're not going to get into all the details of the medical. You've done a good job of explaining the difference. There is quite a bit in that. People should go look at that. We will talk about that at a later date, but you've got a screen share if you want to pull up the list you had earlier, and
sure.
Go ahead.
The first thing I'm going to do is just give a sort of a quick run through of the full access petition itself, and then we'll go sort of to lists that I have. So for those people who want to follow along, ORCA.OK.com. And so if you go to the ORCA webpage, then there's a place where it says download the full access petition. And that's the one that's live right now on ORCA is this one here. So I'm not going to read over it in detail. We're just going to kind of look at the headers. and then we're going to go back and talk about some more specifics.
Okay,
So
one
first,
thing, well, hold on. One thing before you start, I want to make this clear to everybody. And so I'll ask you and you can explain it. This is, while it has not been filed yet, this is the final language, correct?
this is the final language, barring, somebody says, here's a typo or whatever.
Okay,
So
so
this is the
I
final.
understand there can still be changes made, and I
Yeah.
have no doubt there's places I want it changed. But if people have
Yeah.
ideas and they are not happy with it and they want it changed, it's not filed yet. I want to explain it to
Not
everybody.
filed yet.
But Jed
Yeah.
has explained that for the most part, barring any big issues, this is the final language, correct?
Yeah. So
Okay, I just want everybody to
over the
understand
last,
that.
yeah, over the last 10 days, there's been a couple really small tweaks to the medical. Just one place where just the order of terms were changed just to make it more sort of clear. And then just, a couple tiny little things like that.
Right. I understand there hasn't
well-
been any serious changes of issues that we were concerned about and have spoke about publicly. None of that has been changed. It's been dotting I's and crossing T's. I understand that. So again, I want everybody to understand what we're looking at now. We are being told is the final language. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing is just section 1 right off the bat. Nothing in this article shall be construed to limit or abrogate any privileged right, immunity, or defense of medical marijuana patient licensees, caregiver licensees, or medical marijuana business licensees. So basically, first idea is in no way is this in any way going to worsen, harm, dampen, diminish the medical program. It's basically going to be here's the medical program and everyone 21 and older too. So the everyone 21 and older too, exact same possession rights, exact same home grow rights, exact same protections when it comes to testing, when it comes to impairment issues, employment issues, medical care issues, parental right issues, license issues such as firearms, motor vehicle, DUI issues, police that they can't search you or seize or detain you, that local entities can't screw around with you, that there's no further licensing that's required. So if you're a dispensary, if you're a medical dispensary and this passes, then you could just start selling to anyone 21 and older. There's a bit of a time delay, but then once that kicks in, and then taxation and expenditures, and we'll go over this in more detail. And retroactivity, basically, that's the criminal justice, that's the expungement stuff, and then just basically some housekeeping. So that sort of in it, just very quickly is how it looks, and it's fairly tight and relatively short. It's not much longer than 788. All right, so let me stop that share. And now let me go to the item by item page. And if anybody has any questions, as Chris is also noting here, please do post your questions. Okay, so now next one. Okay, so what I have here is a summary of all the patient and individual rights, and I'll go through them one by one. Just stop me if you have any questions. And I aggregated all the rights language from both the medical and the full access just to begin, because they're pretty close to identical. Exact same possession rights, that is, 1 ounce of concentrate and 6 mature plants, 6 immature plants, which we now just say 12 plants, 8 ounces of commercially purchased flour, and so on and so forth. So same possession rights. We added in suppositories in addition to what we have in 788. And in the medical petition, we got rid of the misdemeanor so that if you're caught possessing 1.5 ounces, it's just a fine. And that doesn't pertain to the full access, that's just medical. The medical petition includes reciprocity for people from other states. The medical petition allows people from other states to get a patient card, okay? Now, all the rest of it is the exact same. privacy protections, basically just general privacy language that no business, the government can't make any way publicly available anything pertaining to your cannabis purchases and so forth. You could sign it away if you are at a store, just like they do now. You might sign a form that allows you to get on a phone list or whatever, but absent anything like that, they can't in any way make public you as a customer. All right. Now, one big thing is that in many ways, employment, DUI, and so forth, people get in trouble merely for having a metabolite in their system. So you got to typically do a urine test. And what this says is that metabolites, which is what they'd be testing for the urine, does not represent impairment, does not represent even a violation of federal law, because you could have THC in your system from federally legal hemp. So it says that testing for metabolites in no way whatsoever has any evidential significance for impairment, and in no way whatsoever has evidential significance for the violation, that the idea that you're violating a federal law. So your employer can't say, look, you're violating a federal law, we have to fire you. Because if you have THC in your system, it could just as well come from federally legal hemp. Next line is that neither metabolites nor active THC can be dispositive of marijuana use. What that means is that it doesn't prove marijuana use. Even active THC in your system doesn't prove marijuana use. And Frank is saying THC meaning delta 8, 9, and 10. Yes, as we define it, we're defining THC with respect to tetrahydrocannabinol, including all isomers.
Okay, let's stop for a second on that one and talk about that for a second. Let's let everybody know the conversations we've been having about these other Delta numbers and law enforcement and others, what their plans are.
Yeah, so OBN contacted me to ask my views on this issue. They were thinking about running a bill making Delta 8 illegal in Oklahoma, and I hopefully talk them out of it.
But they've got to do something though, right? Because what I'm betting here is Frank is hoping they just leave it alone like it is now. And the reason why I wanted to stop here and bring this up is because they're not. And we know that they're not. We know that they're trying to do something. So this is kind of a trying to get to it before they do, right?
So, right. So the OBN might wait a year, pending what happens with ORCA. That's one thing that we talked about. Or I think I talked them out of outright banning Delta 8. Can't say for sure that I did, but it sounded like in that conversation that they understood my arguments as to why they shouldn't ban it. But they might want to wrap it up into our medical marijuana program. So Delta 8 has very similar effects to Delta 9. So they might want to say, the OBN might want to have a bill this coming session that simply regulates Delta 8 just like Delta 9. Steve is saying, so what's stopping the legislature from rewriting it their way? Well, this would be a constitutional amendment. So the legislature can't make any changes unless in that article they're given the right to change something, which we'll talk about. So a constitutional amendment stops the legislature from making changes. So basically what this is saying is, whether it's Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, whether it's THCO, THCP, or anything else the chemists come up with, that it doesn't prove that if you have it in your system, it doesn't prove you're impaired. It doesn't prove that you're in violation of federal law. It can't be used against you. The only thing that they can do with it is if they do a blood test, or in some future technology, if they could find active THC in your system, that doesn't prove impairment. But if they had independent reasons to think you're impaired, then they could use a blood test to support They're independent reasons for thinking you're impaired. So if you get into a car accident, imagine like you get into a fatal car accident and they want to do a blood test, and they do a cognitive test, they do a behavioral test, and all the signs are that you're impaired by something. And they wanted to then charge you with driving under the influence. If they have shown behavioral, cognitive impairment, they could also enter into evidence that you have active THC. They can't do it with metabolites, but they could do it with active THC. But if the only information they had was that you had active THC in your system, that could not be used to establish impairment. So the establishing of impairment is going to depend upon things other than what's in your system. That's the way that's all written.
Okay.
Right.
I do want to say, Steve, hang on, because I don't want us to forget to bring up that part about changing things. That does come up here shortly, and it's something that, believe me, makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, Steve. So pay attention. We're in this together. All right, Lawrence, go ahead.
All right. So no employer, safety sensitive or otherwise, no employer can refuse to hire you, can fire you, could penalize you for what you do in your off hours. So they could set policies that say we won't allow you to use at work. They could set policies that say we won't let you be impaired at work, but they cannot in any way act against you for what you do during your own private time.
Okay. And that only works. This only matters if they want to fire you for smoking cannabis. This doesn't work if they want to fire you because they don't like the look on your face. So everybody out there, let's don't think this gives us any protections as far as jobs in Oklahoma. This is an at-will state. They just can't fire you for this reason. It can be for no reason at all, and they can do it every day. So we still don't have any real job security here, but it has nothing to do with cannabis at that point if this passes. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, that's right. And so Amy asks, what about Department of Transportation? Well, at the state level, they can't do anything, right? It's a different issue at the federal level, but this is complicated because the Drug-Free Workplace Act, the federal law, doesn't require that anyone's fired. The Drug-Free Workplace Act doesn't require that they fire you for off-work activity. So if an employer were to do that, citing DOT rules, they're just making it up. And so presumably somebody here, if their employer says that we're firing you because the Department of Transportation won't let you use cannabis off work, presumably you would have a cause of action against them.
But until somebody loses their job and takes that to court, it's not going to change.
Yeah. So, right. So basically, there is no federal law that says you can't use cannabis outside of work. And so if they want to make that claim, if they want to interpret it that way, I don't see a legal basis for it. Well, there have been cases, but the way this is written, the idea is that basically people are getting protected. All right, so where are we? No denial of healthcare for marijuana use. And so right now, we have from 788 language already to that effect, but still, in pain management, in oncology and psychiatry, physicians will deny you treatment if you have a patient card or you use cannabis. And what this does is it defines the standard of care to be such that doctors have no need to deny you treatment, to alter your treatment based upon cannabis use, unless they have some clear medical reason for doing so. Like if some research says this drug that they prescribed you will make your situation worse if you have THC in your system, right? So, for instance, anesthetics and THC don't mix well. So barring any medical evidence showing that THC is contraindicated in light of a certain medication, the doctors will have no legal basis for denying you. In fact, the standard of care says that it's fully within their rights to treat you by prescribing benzodiazepines, by prescribing opioids, and so on, irrespective of your cannabis use. All right, next one. No presumption of child endangerment solely on the basis of a parent using cannabis. And so the DHS can't come in and say, because you use cannabis in your household, we're going to take away your children. They won't be able to do that. And they won't be able to charge, say, a pregnant mother with child endangerment solely on the basis of there being THC in, for instance, the umbilical cord tissue and so on. No denial of educational or extracurricular opportunities solely on the basis of cannabis use. So, that's sort of obvious. You can't be denied access to school, access to school sports and so forth solely on that basis. No denial of Second Amendment rights, just like we have right now in the law. And they can't charge you with the DUI based upon metabolites or solely based upon active THC. Again, the only way they could do it is if they do a roadside test where you're like stumbling around, right, where you're slurring, where there's clear signs of cognitive impairment. That would be how they would have to establish impairment. They can't do it solely through active THC, and there's no evidential value whatsoever for metabolites. Here's a big one, because people are getting their parole and probation frequently revoked. We recently saw this memorandum from the Department of Corrections that basically reversed an opinion from 2018, which now basically says that if somebody is out on parole or probation, they go back to jail if they have cannabis in their system. And so that would stop that. No revocation of parole, probation, or bail for cannabis use. And
wait, hold on. Let's just point out that the reason for that new policy, the reason for that is because this state doesn't think this is a medical program, because this program is too open to be considered a medical program. So they're never going to accept it as a medical program. Therefore, we've got to get that. We've definitely got to get that in the Constitution. Just to stop people from getting arrested because of the way this program has played out. That's worth acknowledging, I believe, because we've played it out this way. It's been us.
Yep. So about 2 months ago now, there was this appellate court decision about somebody who was detained and searched because they had some cannabis in their vehicle. And the appellate court basically said that whether or not you have a patient card is irrelevant. Law enforcement could still detain and search you. And so we want to stop that. And so law enforcement cannot detain you. Law enforcement cannot search you solely by virtue of you having cannabis on your person, in your vehicle, and so on. And local governments can't impose any rules that are onerous. They can't establish any kinds of fees or permits or whatever with respect to home grow. They can't restrict personal use in any way that's more onerous than what our tobacco laws are. So
and that's to combat these stupid little small town Oklahoma that's just trying to charge you for a permit for a home grow that they're not allowed to do, or they're passing smell ordinances where if anybody in the neighborhood dares smell your cannabis, you're going to jail. Or if they even think there is a light on that they can see, then the light is a nuisance problem now. So it's just gotten ridiculous. It's just really gotten ridiculous.
Yeah. So, there's obviously a significant debate as to whether or not this should be constitutional or statutory. And I see the arguments on both sides of it. In many ways, I'd like this to be statutory, but at the same time, I don't, as Steve mentioned, I don't want basically our lawmakers just to undo all of these things. Because, I think that we're in danger of 788 getting undone in various ways this legislative session with the uproar by farmers and ranchers and so on. So there's a good reason to have a lot of this in the Constitution, because our lawmakers then can't change it. And when we ask ourselves, what's the point of a constitution? Well, the federal constitution is very different than a state constitution, but I think most people would agree that one of the points of a constitution, federal or state, is to protect us from the government, to limit the government, right? And so almost the entirety of this petition is what the government can't do to us, protecting our rights. So almost the entirety of this petition is, I think, quite apt for the Constitution, saying we, the people, shall no longer be oppressed by the prohibitionist legacy instituted by the governments of this state, around the country, federal government, and so on.
Okay, let's move on. We got about 20 minutes left.
Yep. Okay. So next thing, taxes. Well, the way it's set up is that the medical and the full access are independent petitions. If the medical could win or lose, pass or fail, the full access could independently pass or fail. And if the full access passes, regardless of what happens with the medical, then the language would say that the taxes on medical will go down to zero. And so anybody with a patient card, caregiver card, they'll pay zero in excise tax. And there will be, however, for people without a card, a 15% excise tax for full access, for the full access program. In addition to that, if and when federal law changes, then there will be a 3% wholesale tax solely upon export out of Oklahoma. So it would not add any further cost to the people in this state. But when federal law changes and we could export cannabis to other states, then there'll be a wholesale tax, just like there is, a tax on our alcohol our gasoline production here. And so I would kind of hope that that would generate a lot of revenue, and it gives the legislature the power to lower, might be hard to think they'll ever do it, but it gives the legislature the power to lower the excise tax on cannabis.
They won't. It's great. They fine, put it in there, you use the ink up, I guess, but they won't. And there's no reason for them ever to do it if they think that.
Well, I do think that if and when federal law changes, if we see a lot of revenue coming in from the wholesale tax, then who knows, maybe they would lower the excise tax, right, on cannabis at the retail level.
Okay.
We lower taxes.
I'll be happy to take that bet any day of the week, and I'll be here 20 years from now to collect if that's what it takes. Because I am sure they will not lower it. But no, that's okay. Let's, like I said, let's move on. I don't want to get stuck on that. Let's move on so we can put the screen down so they'll see us both before we argue.
Just quickly, if I recall correctly, Fallon, when she was in office, lowered our income tax rate twice.
Yeah, we're talking about cannabis. We're not talking about income taxes. It's not even the same. We're right. Setting up, even in this petition, because we have to. We're setting up cannabis differently than everything else. It has a special sin tax. And the idea that they will ever drop that sin tax in Oklahoma, I simply say, look at our alcohol. Look at the taxes on that. It doesn't go down.
I don't know if they have or not. I've never.
No, they have. I used to work in a liquor store. There's a whole bunch of little taxes on there. You've got to add them all. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Ask anybody in the liquor industry.
All right. Next, what happens with all this money? So maybe we generate a couple $100 million. So where does it go? As written, 10%, after the money pays for the program itself, 10% goes to funding ways to improve environmental resiliency, as it said. So in terms of water usage and so on and so forth, to make sure that basically we don't overuse our natural resources here in light of the fact that we might become one of the biggest cannabis producers in the world. And the next one is there's something like 5,000 families that have been in a holding pattern on a waiting list for over a decade to receive benefits for their disabled children. And so there is a 5% of all the monies generated would go towards this waiver program to fund basically the costs related to taking care of a disabled child. And, you know, when we put this together and I was asked what I want to add to it, that's what I asked to add to it. So this was my request as to some good social thing we could do with some of that money. There's like 4 different specific ways in which they're funding different types of mental health and drug abuse programs. They list 4 different ones. And so together they come to 14%. 3% of the money goes to pay for research. So people could apply for research grants to study marijuana effects and so on. There's 3% that go into waste remediation. So basically everything from the waste during growing across to the waste during processing, all the way to all the plastics and so forth that come from packaging and dispensaries. So waste remediation.
Wait.
There's also
wait. Hold on. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
So what do you mean? We're going to take 3% of the money and give it to an agency to figure out what to do with waste? Is that the issue? With what's the waste produced from the industry?
I don't know exactly, but my understanding is this, that setting up programs, right, to manage that waste, what to do with the waste, research on how to reuse the waste products, how to prevent waste. And let me add this, that whenever monies aren't used, if the money doesn't end up getting used for one reason or another, it goes into the general fund. So if they don't have enough programs to address this waste remediation, whatever money isn't used goes into the general fund. So it's like an up to 3%.
Okay, to jump back up a little bit, 10% to environmental issues to.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an existing agency, right? This existing agency, the Environmental Protection Agency, or whatever it's called for Oklahoma. Okay. It's an existing agency, correct? It's unlike the waste thing you're talking about. It's not creating a new agency, right? So then they get funded by
these aren't creating new agencies.
Okay, well, okay. So as I said, it's not creating a new agency. The DEQ exists already. This is just DEQ now has to do more work. Why doesn't DEQ, who gets a budget that they request every year from the Capitol, not just ask for why don't these things just ask for a larger increase in their budget from the Capitol and get it from there rather than earmarking specific cannabis money for that?
I think one answer is that basically every agency in our state, except for prisons, are underfunded, and maybe prisons too, in a way. All of our agencies are grossly underfunded. And so if they ask for money, they're not going to get what they want. Now, I'm absolutely not in a position. This is a question you have to bring to Jed.
Right. And I'm not trying to look, and Lawrence, and I'm not trying to attack you on this. I know you help with the language, but I know it's not all your ideas. I understand that. So I'm not trying to attack you with it. I'm just questioning the language.
Yeah. So it would go to basically programs to improve water efficiency and so on, because our water table is declining. Right. And, in 10, 20 years, we might have a water crisis in our state. Look at California, for instance, and especially with all the water that's used, right, as agriculture increases, then some money makes sense. I don't know what kinds of monies we're really talking about. I'm just not in a position to address that, but that there will be future need for finding ways to improve our water table and keeping it clean. I think there's reasons for that, because we do have lots of pollutants in our state, and some towns and counties have dangerous levels of certain pollutants. So these things, I guess, matter.
Okay, let's go ahead and keep going.
Yeah. All right. a crop insurance program. So basically some way of funding an insurance program for overspray. Again, I don't know all the details of this, but there's a neighboring farm often might end up overspraying, and that might get into a field of cannabis that then makes the cannabis unfit for human consumption and destroys the crop. So again, a funding program to address that. And once again, let me say that any monies not used go back to the general fund. So how this gets implemented, how these monies get allocated in the real world, then the agencies will set up a budget. And if not all the 3% gets assigned, then whatever's left goes back into the general fund.
Okay.
All right. And 3% pays for the expungement program. So, we're talking about tens of thousands of people with past criminal records related to cannabis, maybe still some people in jail related to cannabis. And so up to 3% will pay for all the legal fees, all the filing fees, court costs, and so forth for that expungement. And eventually everybody gets cleared, right? All their records get cleared and so on. And once that happens, once again, whatever monies aren't used go into the general fund. And so then whatever's left after, I guess this is about 40%, the remaining 60% goes to the general fund earmarked for education, just like in 788. And now one more thing about this is that I really think this is perhaps the most politically controversial, right? We're all like, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And does this make sense? And none of us really have enough knowledge. At least I don't have enough knowledge to explain every one of these items. So one thing that we built into this is all of these items, every single one of them, with the exception of the research for marijuana and the expungement program, every other one could be changed by our legislature.
And there you have it. Okay. Hold on to that for a thought for a second. Read the rest of your list, and then let's put the screen down, please.
Okay. So after all this allocation stuff, there's a section on retroactivity. That's the expungement, right? That's the criminal justice reform. It starts off by requiring that the Department of Corrections provide a list of anybody who's currently in prison doing time for cannabis. So, like, it's controversial. Are there any? Some people say yes.
That's something that's always been missing, is their willingness or their ability, I think, to properly provide us with that answer.
So it gives them 180 days, and we'll pay for it out of this, 180 days to provide that list. And anybody with a past criminal record could have it vacated and expunged as if it never happened. Anybody who might still be in jail could get resentenced. So whatever time might be, they might be still serving related to cannabis or have served related to cannabis, it's subtracted from their total time in prison. And then at the very end, what we have is sort of various provisions in relation to federal law. And one of the more progressive things that we have in this is, if federal law changes, not just by a change in statute, but if federal law changes by executive order, if federal law changes by a Department of Justice memorandum, if federal law changes by any relevant court precedent, anything that we could use to say that there's now a basis for interstate commerce, we could engage in interstate commerce. So if we had something like the Cole memo that added to it, saying the DEA is not even going to stop when there's trade between two legal cannabis states, anything like that, then we will start being able to export cannabis.
Okay, go ahead and shrink that screen, please. Okay. All right, let's talk about that part. Explain that a little bit better, the part, all that stuff, where the money is going to go, the money that's allocated. At the end of that, you said that, well, during that, you also said, and any of this money not being used will go to the general fund, which implies they don't have to use it all. So they could just stick it all in the general fund. And then at the end, you said, and the legislators can change this, correct?
Right.
Okay. we're going to wrap it up here fairly soon, but I just want to give my take on this. I love the criminal justice stuff. I love the things you and I have been talking about for the last 6 months, the protections of people, the elimination of anybody going to jail for cannabis anymore. I mean, that's been the goal. And when it comes time to vote this, if this is my only choice, I'm probably going to vote for it because of that factor. But me personally, anyway, I feel like this is a huge missed opportunity. One of the things I had hoped for, and we've been talking about it for a couple years, was in some states, they pass cannabis laws, they pass full access, and then they have an increase in the homeless population. And we've talked about why that happens. You've looked into why that happens. We understand that's because property values go up and things like that. It's not because all the stoners moved to that state. It's a little more complicated than that. But most states don't do anything about it until it's a big problem. And then everybody wants to figure out how to address the homeless problem. I was really hoping, because I've been talking about it for 2 years, that when we passed full access, we would do that on the front side. Maybe some money for some mini houses for the homeless or something. Now, there might be some things in there that help them. And I think that's where we got to get into the details of like the drug rehab and things like that. You were talking about the 14%.
Right.
I'm betting there's some money.
If I recall, it's either
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's either 3% or 5%. I forget which. It's either 3% or 5% of all that money that has to do with mental health and drug issues.
Yeah.
Will be for grants related to job training and housing and so on.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's 3%. That's I just think we could have done better. I'm just very disappointed in what in for us anyway.
Yeah,
this has been about the change. For us, this has been about changing the things. It's about changing the country. It's been about making huge steps in helping society. And we've done a minimal here to get it done, a minimal instead of a maximum, instead of something really big.
Right. So two issues. One is that your voice is significant, but one thing that I guess Jed and I myself felt was we did not get a lot of people from this community speaking up about these allocations. We did not, I think during the whole really 2 months of public comment, I think ORCA got 6 emails, over 2 months. And maybe one person out of all that said anything about the money. And of course you have, but there just was no, and you and I, we brought it up multiple times on this show, to contact Jed about where you want this money to go. And nobody has. So, there's only so much arguing I could do with Jed, only so much arguing you could do with Jed, and nobody spoke up. So that's one factor. Another factor is that when it comes to if we had, say, 10% that goes to homelessness, I think Jed had this worry that that's going to potentially hurt the petition, because people in their minds will be thinking weed, homelessness. When we legalize weed, there's going to be more homelessness. And I think that he was concerned that the general voters out there, when they put those two things together, it'll discourage them from voting. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that was part of his reflections on all of this. Personally, I agree. I would like to have seen a very significant amount, let's say 10%, going to a whole body of programs that have to do with people who are economically at risk.
Well, let me say this. I'm not trying to say Jed failed here, okay, or that you failed or anybody else failed, other than maybe all of us, everybody, the community, Jed, you, me, everybody involved, in my opinion, because I don't believe this is the best that we could have done. I believe this is what we ended up with. And now from from other people's standpoint, maybe this is great. Just not from mine. It's not just not from my perspective. That's all. It's not as good as we could have done. Other people have a different perspective on it and what's important to them. So again, I'm not trying to.
One thing, of course, is that there's always going to be,
Go ahead.
There's always going to be compromise, right? So, in every political calculation, every negotiation, there's compromise. When I look at this, pretty much all my concerns are those social justice concerns, protecting people, right? Protecting people and then overcoming the damage that the war on drugs have done to people's lives. And it does that.
But some of the social justice part is that big chunk of money we could grab to help people, instead of a few dollars. I just, that to me is part of the social justice of it, not just stop it from today forward, but to fix some of what's happened.
But at the same time, consider this: 5% goes to families with disabled children. That's a pretty big thing. And I agree.
I understand that, Lawrence. Listen, Lawrence, that's a huge thing. That's great for the small percentage of people in Oklahoma who are in that situation. That's great.
Yep.
But that doesn't change what I just said. That's great. I'm glad you got that in there. Okay. That's going to help a number of people. I don't know the number.
5,000 people on that list.
Okay. So say it helps 20,000. Okay.
Yeah.
The numbers what I'm talking about could have helped 100,000.
Well,
it's
what's
great.
The
I'm not saying it had to be one or the other.
Yeah.
No, and I know that's not the population. I know that's not the homeless population. I'm just saying it could have helped in many ways, not just with the homeless situation. It could help with low income housing all the way around. And that could easily help more than 100,000 people, easily. But again, it's not one or the other. So I'm not trying to compare one or the other. I'm not trying to take away from yours at all. That's great. I'm saying I wish we had the same success in other giving areas. That's what I'm saying. The same success. That's all I ask.
If Jed received 200 emails from people all about where this money should go, that would have been great. We could have gone through those and we could have run the numbers and we could have basically put together a plan to optimize all those interests. We could have, we could have had hundreds of people talking about this. Nobody did. When we hosted those town hall events, some of them had maybe 25 people, but some of them had far less. And, when we keep on saying to people, contact Jed, like I said, we've had like months of public comment and ORCA has received like 6 emails. So, we're in the 11th hour. We're in the 11th hour and 59th minute. If all of a sudden Jed received 50 or 100 emails, help the homeless, it's not, I wouldn't say it's too late.
Okay. Well, I'll continue to scream. We know that. All right. And again, explain this. The legislators can change it because in my mind, that means it was all a waste of ink anyway.
So I'd say 2 things. First of all, it would require a supermajority of 75%. And I know
all right, hold on.
Something percent of Republicans.
Yes.
But I asked a lawmaker about this.
Go ahead.
I asked a lawmaker, right, whether it would be easy to get a supermajority of 75% to change these things. And he said no. He said that, there's enough different factions among Republicans that it's going to be hard to get consensus to change, right, a revenue issue. Like when they tried to, when they a couple of years ago had to make a change and get that 75%, I think they kept on failing vote after vote. So it's not that easy. It's not a given. And there's political pressure. Like it's not like they can just wipe it all clean. So it's a compromise. And let me put it to you this way. Here are our options. No changes whatsoever. Any change lawmakers want to make with a simple majority, right? I don't think we wanted either of them. So it's in between. And so the in between means that you and I and any other interested party could go to the Capitol and have conversations. And Chris, you could make the case to our lawmakers. They neglected the homeless population. Let's drop that environmental resiliency from 10% down to 5% and give 5% to the homeless or the vets. I would want there to be, right, opportunities for those changes as time goes on, because part of the idea here is if it's a constitution, it's set. And so we want all of our rights to be there, right, forever. But when it comes to the nickels and dimes and the dollars and the social needs, all that changes over time. And because all that changes over time, the legislature is empowered to make changes. I think that's a nice compromise, honestly.
Well, okay, and I can see if you explain it that way, and in the future, I could see some possibilities. My concern is in this particular case, it's funny, in the taxes, my concern is long-term. In this particular case, my concern is short-term, because of the attitude that everybody in the state has towards cannabis right now. I mean, I really just think, the program's in considerably more trouble than people realize. And, caps will be here next year one way or the other, and that's going to change the whole landscape, and whether they're good or bad, not even going to argue about that, but everything is going to start to change next year, because this is no longer this small grassroots effort to try and get medicine to people. This is huge industry that wants to make money and is going to do whatever is necessary to make sure they make that money.
Yeah, at some point, as I see it, at some point in 2019, can't say exactly, pin down the day, but at some point in 2019, this changed from being grassroots activists about people's needs to profit, to corporate interests, to big money, right, investors, to lawyers and businessmen and people who are basically trying to engineer it for their own gain. It changed. And, that means that at the Capitol, that the chain dispensaries and the big grows and all of them, they're hiring really well-financed lobbyists, some of the biggest lobbyists in the state, right?
Yeah.
There's
every lobbyist I've talked to has cannabis clients, every one of them.
And that's something that our viewers probably
Except
don't
me.
even know. Right?
Except me.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, right.
That's okay.
So, all of the big business entities have lobbyists that are pushing our lawmakers to do things for those businesses. And the voice of patients have been smothered by those beings, right?
Yeah.
And it's like tooth and nail to try to get patient interests, keep them at the table. And
I think, look,
we have it because of a legacy, but
I think
more and more.
I think the community, while I understand they've not stepped up and contacted Jed and sent enough emails and gotten involved enough, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon either. Meaning, I don't think they're going to pick up this petition and run with it either. I'm not seeing, from people I'm talking to in private conversations, I'm not seeing any support. I mean, aside from us talking about, well, look, we need this criminal justice stuff, all I'm hearing is people complain, or people in the business that want caps. I mean, no one's that I'm talking to seems to be too happy.
Nobody will get arrested for cannabis. Nobody will go to jail for cannabis. Anybody who's faced cannabis charges in the past, those go away. Nobody's going to be denied health care for cannabis. Nobody's going to get a DUI because of cannabis, right? Nobody's going to lose their children because of cannabis. Nobody's going to lose their job because of cannabis. Nobody's going to be denied an educational opportunity because of cannabis. That's what this is about.
Okay, so then you would think that if every other political decision being made here is so fucking accurate, you would think that hanging on to this community might have been a priority, but it hasn't been. So it's not going to be. And so they're not getting the support from the community.
Right. Because it's not patients over profits.
All right. we're going to wrap it up. We will go over the medical language in detail after it's filed. I really wanted to talk about this one a little sooner because again, this is one that while I'm not thrilled with, I could see myself maybe reluctantly, but I could maybe see myself voting for it if I don't have any better options at the time. And who knows what will play out between now and then. So I really wanted to get a look at this one and talk to this, get everybody else talking about this one again. Because again, I think of the two, this one's much more important, I think. What do you think?
My feeling, yeah, my feeling as well, because I don't want anyone to be adversely affected by cannabis use. I don't want people to lose their jobs. I don't want people to go to
Right.
jail. I don't want people to be detained by the police, to be denied health care. And that's what this petition is all about.
Right. I agree. Okay. Well, we are going to wrap it up for now. Everybody, please, if a couple hundred of you want to join me and email or message Jed, please contact me. We'll do it together. I'd be happy to see some changes. I'd be happy to find a way to increase the enthusiasm behind this petition because I don't see any enthusiasm. Not in my circle, but that's just my circle. Maybe everybody else's circle's different and they see enthusiasm, but I'm not as of yet. So any last words, Lawrence?
One thing is just bear in mind that when this gets filed, assuming it gets filed, when it gets filed, all the people who would want to make changes, it'll be too late. So I just really hope that, those changes could have been done weeks ago. We're in 11th hour and 59th minute, but maybe there's something to make a change about. And once it's filed, then my hope is that it'll send a message to our lawmakers as well, because one way or another, federal law is changing, and we will be missing out on vast opportunities if we don't get ahead of it.
And to jump back to our little teaser at the beginning, everybody that is interested in anything to do with psychedelic legislation or legislation on psychedelics, give us a call, please contact us. Let us know what you think it should look like. We've got some ideas. Those will be out public soon, but meanwhile, we'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, folks, that's it for now. Until next time, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.